Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another amazing edition of the Best Practices Show. Have you ever thought about this? There's a silent killer of my profits in the practice, but I don't know what it is. I'm looking at write-offs. I'm looking at overhead. I'm looking at my loan payments. Well, you're missing a big one. It's called collections. We're going to show you the silent killer of your profits, where it is, and what to do about it with our CEO, Dr. Barrett Straub. Do not miss this. So please listen up. I hope you guys enjoy this, and we'll see you soon. Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. In our ongoing series with our CEO, Dr. Barrett Straub, we are dissecting the true profitability within a dental practice. And we're doing this on a regular basis because we're geeks about this. And today we're going to be talking about the silent killer of your profit. And a lot of dentists skip right over this one.
Yes.
Tell us what it is and why.
The silent killer of your profit. Well, let's first, you've been hearing us talk about the financial gaps. This is our model. This is our financial model. And there's 4 gaps. And a lot of these are ones we know, and they're very obvious. So the effort gap, and that's largely our PPO write-off. That makes a lot of sense, right? If the more we write off, the less our profit margin will be. That's the first one. Our third gap is the overhead gap, and that makes a lot of sense too. We have business expenses, and those are going to correlate to less money left over at the end of the day. Our fourth gap is the cash flow. That's complex. We'll walk through at some point our loan payments, depreciation, all those cash flow statement, non-P&L. Those reduce our profitability. But there's one that's so obvious, it's largely overlooked, and it's literally a silent killer, and that's collections gap.
Ooh. And you know what that was, Andy? That was a cliffhanger. He did that really good. You're getting good at this podcasting
I'm
thing.
Learning every day.
Good.
And this silent killer is literally picking the pockets of dentists, thousands of dentists every day.
It is. And it's so easy. Explain to us what the collections gap is.
Yeah. So let's just think about it this way. We have our gross production. And we adjust off a certain amount due to various things in the effort gap, which we spent lots of time on. And the result of that is your net production.
Right.
And that is our collectible amount. That's our maximum potential for revenue in our business. And then collections, or actual revenue, is a percentage of that number. And so it is literally the difference between your net production and your actual revenue.
Yeah.
And so when I say actual revenue, that's what you actually pulled in, what you actually collected. It's the top of your profit and loss statement.
Yeah.
And unless you pay attention to the gap between net production and that number, you're going to miss how much profit should be in your pocket and isn't.
Right.
And so what I mean is we say 100%. You should collect 100% of your net production.
You should.
And a lot of our clients are collecting more than 100%.
Yeah.
And when you're collecting 95, 96, 97%, we think, boy, that's really good because it's almost 100.
Yeah.
And we'll show you math as we go through this podcast that every percent you don't collect comes right out of your pocket, doctor.
Totally.
Yeah.
Now, let me go there because I'm going to say this.
Okay.
It's not unusual for us to see many, many, many practices not at 100%. They come into our coaching program and it just gets skipped over. And let's talk about the reasons why. And I know if you're a dentist listening to this, you're like, no, we collect 100%.
Right.
The truth of it is that you went into dentistry and you're a good person. You care about people. And some of you purchased a practice where Susie came with the practice.
Yeah.
She's been working here for 20 years. She knows all the patients. And you took the practice that was a good practice and you're growing it to a better practice. And now it's picking up speed. It might be producing more. And Susie is still talking to Mrs. Jones, and she knows all the kids. She knows, and that's great. It's all great stuff. And when you look at it at the end of the year, you're like, wow, we collected 95%, you know, but she's been here forever. And so you're caught in this situation where you have a good person, and it's not the person, it's the overall thinking of the practice. And you don't want to create any conflict, so you're good with the 5% that you're leaving on the table in some cases, right?
Yeah, this is a good point because it happens not overnight. It's like a slow fade.
Right.
You used to be at 100. Now you're at 99. You're working hard. The person collecting your money is trying her best. And now it's 97. And then you don't pay attention for 6 more months, and now it's 95, to your point. And what does 95% mean? So when we say the collections gap, it's the gap between 100% and whatever your collection's at. So in this case, it's a 5% gap. Let's talk about that. Let's assume you're a solo doctor and your revenue is $1.2 million annually. Right. Okay, that is net production after adjustments. $1.2 million is what you should collect, but you collect 95% of that. Pretty good. It's almost 100. Mm-hmm. Well, let's do some math. 5% of 1.2 is $60,000.
It's a lot of money.
$5,000 a month that the doctor should have been able to put in his or her personal bank account and can't.
Yeah.
And so that's a problem.
It's a big problem. Yeah. And I wasn't clearing my throat. I was choking on the $5,000. That's $5,000 a month. That's your rent payment in some regards. It's a considerable amount of your supplies, a good portion of probably your lab. And it just gets left behind. It also is the tip of the iceberg because when you're continuously doing that, your AR is floating up.
Right.
And so today we're going to be talking about how you can, one of the first things you probably have to do is just be aware of this problem. It's also limiting your ability to make some of your loan payments. That could be, that's a loan payment, right?
This is cash flow.
Yeah.
So this is $60,000 less cash flow at the end of the year that you should have. Now, why is this the silent killer of profit? The other ones make sense, right? We wrote it off. I know I'm not going to click that. We spend it for business overhead. I know that's not my money. But when we don't collect 100%, there's a couple things. One, it increases your overhead.
Yes.
It increases your overhead percentage. Okay. It's a silent killer because when you don't collect 100% of your net production, your overhead percentage as a percentage of revenue goes up. Why? Because we spend money to produce dental production. Our overhead is calculated as a percentage of actual revenue.
Right. So
we've spent the money already. We've produced the dentistry. It's all gone. Like we can't get any of that back based on not collecting.
Right.
Okay. It's already spent. So every dollar we don't collect, it just comes right out of our pocket.
Right.
And so that's where this silent killer is because if someone cancels or we don't do a procedure we plan to do, at least we save a little bit in lack of overhead. We don't have the lab bill. We maybe don't have the hour of salary. Obviously, we still have an opportunity to fill that chair. Like we can recover somewhat from that.
Right.
Lack of collections is different. We cannot recover. It's gone. The money is spent. The time is gone. The opportunity to recover that has gone. And that's why it's the silent killer, because we don't appreciate it until it's gone. And quite often, we see, to your point, we see dentists all the time and like, I just don't have enough money. I want more. I thought it'd be better. And we look at their collections. We're like, okay, 95%. How would $5,000 a month extra? That would be huge.
Right.
We just have to collect.
Right.
The dentistry we've already done and the patients have already agreed to pay for.
Right. And one of the narratives that we talk about that other people are talking about so much is that in growth mode or you're growing, you're always thinking about costs and how it affects your overhead. this is where your overhead gets bumped up right away.
Right.
And you're always thinking about how I can outproduce this, but there's still the silent killer that's existing. And my argument is that that killer is going to grow a little bit. The other thing I might add, you'll see the opposite of it here in a second when we start talking about solutions. If you're collecting 95%, I would say that there's probably a bigger issue. There's an undervaluing of your dentistry, because when you have done the work, you have a coach, you have done the training from an administrative standpoint, and your team is collecting 101, 102%. You know that they value your time. You know that they value the dentistry. You know that they're talking value with the patients, and you know the next 3 months they're going to tell you to raise your fees because listen, we're better than that.
Right.
So it's a silent killer, not only financially but also from a mindset. In the practice.
And I want to go to strategies, but before we go to strategies, let's think about this one idea, and that is, I had it. I just lost it. Well, it'll come back to me.
Yeah.
Let's go to strategies, and that idea will come back to me.
Hey, that happens to me about every 15 minutes because I'm indexing what I want to say, and then I totally forgot it. Squirrel.
Right.
So,
Squirrel.
Yeah. So I know when you're listening to this, you're like, okay, help me out of this. Okay, so I would say number one is, we always say data removes emotion. This is part of our GAP scorecard that we ask all of our doctors to enter their data. Our coaches are monitoring them. We were looking at a couple today. It's not unusual. Now, you might be thinking, well, I only produce $1 million a year, whatever. So it's not unusual. We were doing it today. There's practices producing $500,000 a month.
Yes.
And you have to be good at these disciplines when your practice is smaller, or the dangers and the problems become bigger. So step number one is just, what's your data? What's your data telling you?
Yes, and that just brought back the squirrel to me. Thank you.
There you go.
Awesome.
All right. I'm glad I'm helpful here.
Our brains are aligned, because that was exactly right. So back to that feeling of like, I need some more gas flow. I'm not making enough. We're not doing good enough. Usually what we see without better thinking is, let's go find a bunch of new patients.
Right.
Let's quote unquote do more. Let's produce more. And often when you do your gaps and you look at it, and to your point, you do the data, the quickest way to added cash flow is just collect what you've already done.
Right.
It's the easiest. It's the quickest. It makes the most sense. Why would we invest a bunch of time, money, effort to get a bunch of new patients, or quote unquote do more, if we know we're only going to collect 95%? Why don't we start with collecting that extra $60,000, and then let's go do all that?
For sure.
But let's make sure our financial arrangements are set up so when I do more, when I do find new patients, I know 100% of what I'm owed is going to come through the door. And that only happens with data, tracking numbers, knowledge, and just a conceptual overview of the gaps and how money is leaving your practice and how to tighten those gaps up.
Right.
So thank you.
Hey, I'm so glad I could be helpful in that respect. And that becomes a tremendous opportunity for a lot of practices that come in. So as we see these practices come in, if they're at 95%, my first thought is, oh my goodness. Second thought is, wow, there's an opportunity there. And so they should be well above 100, maybe 101, 102, 103% for a little while until that catches up.
Right. So let's go to strategies. Let's
do it.
Let's say this practice, 1.2 million, they're at 5%. Let's make up that $60,000. There's lots of very tangible ways.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that. But the most important one is the 8 inches between the ears of the person collecting the money.
Right.
Let's talk about that mindset of Susie, you called her before, who's collecting the money. That's the most important.
Right. So mindset is hugely important. We say often in this room, your problems are not your problems. Your problems are how you think about your problems. Some people think dentistry is expensive. They think a lot of people don't want to pay for dentistry. And I think that's a big challenge in a lot of dental practices. It's called the mindset of the person that is collecting the money, and how do we train or develop that person? Now, personally, I believe money spent on dentistry is one of the best investments a human being can make. Now, that's what I believe. I know that's what you believe.
Yes.
But now we have to transfer that belief to someone else. And in all fairness, if you're a team member who is an admin team member and you're great at what you do, you care about what you do, there's not a lot of training. There's just not. Mm-hmm. We also joke about this. And again, we like to have fun, so don't take this the wrong way. We say admin team members, they don't get onboarded, they get waterboarded. We just kind of throw them into the role and expect them to do well. And if that person is trained and developed really in a great way, they can become crazy beneficial to the practice, to themselves, and sometimes downright dangerous. Right. Having the right administrative team member with the great training, they can change the financial landscape of your life in probably about 30 days. Absolutely. I know confidently we could put any one of our 10 coaches in any dental practice and say, listen, work here. Now, they wouldn't do that because they're coaching businesses now, but change the whole landscape of the practice in 30 days.
Absolutely.
Don't you think?
Absolutely. That person collecting your money. So there's a million tasks and skills he or she needs to have. But the number one thing that makes a great financial coordinator or insurance coordinator, or whatever we call that person, is the ability to look someone in the eye, say it's going to be X thousands of dollars. How are you going to pay for it?
Right.
And be good with that.
Yeah.
And be totally comfortable with it. And to your point, value the money and not feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So number one is just address, hey, the person that's mostly accountable to collecting money, what does he or she believe about my dentistry? And should we be having some more conversations about the value of my dentistry and the ability to confidently ask someone for money?
Totally. One of the regular guests that we've had on the podcast, her name is Dr. Anne-Marie Gorska. She's an orthodontist in California. And she says this: that person that sits in that seat has to be able to say, would that be cash, check, or card today for every single appointment, every single dollar. Yeah. Now, it's your job as a dentist to get somebody to that spot, but Absolutely. They have to be fearless in that role when it comes to collecting. It's not about being mean or anything. When you can be confident, talk to somebody and clearly communicate that eye to eye, it's awesome.
And this is one of those humble moments where dentists have to look and say, just because someone's been in dentistry, just because someone's really a good person, just because someone's got a lot of knowledge, doesn't necessarily make them good at that job.
No.
That takes a special person that has those skills and is able to do that. So all of us have people. And we've got to put the right people in the right seats on the bus. And we've got to look at that person that's sitting in that seat and she or he could be amazing. Is she in the right seat?
Right.
Or is someone else that is going to be more confident should be sitting in that seat?
Yeah. And typically, if you're a dentist listening to this, I'll talk to you. You're going to find somebody in that role is typically the gas and you're the brakes.
Yeah.
They're going to want to charge more for what you're doing. They're going to want to collect it. They're going to want to ask your sister-in-law to pay in advance, type
Can
of a
I drive you to the ATM machine? Yeah,
absolutely. And you can't undermine them or jump in the way when they're doing their job. But we can talk about some of the techniques that go along with that. You might be thinking, well, I don't have anybody like that. That's fine. You got to start somewhere. And I think the first thing is just giving them, understanding what the mindset is for somebody in that role. And now we can start to develop them.
Yeah. And I don't want the message to be like this person either innately is the person or not. People can be trained to fit this role.
Right.
Some people are going to take that training and run with it, and some are going to resist it. That's when you know whether they're innately going to be good in this job.
Right.
The number two strategy, number one is just a mindset, but number two, embrace the awkward pause. And I love this, and you're so good at explaining, and it's not the second most important behavior or tactic to collecting money.
Yeah. Before I tell you what the pause is, I'll tell you the challenge. Dentists don't like spaces. Team members don't like spaces. They talk to fill spaces and they just keep talking. And you can actually talk patients out of treatment and not paying. A powerful pause is, Mr. Jones, your fee for today is $4,500. Pause. And there's another piece you can say, we teach bug eyes. Bug eyes are great. Just don't move your lips. Just present the fee, stop talking, and let the patient respond. If the pause goes 25 seconds or 45 seconds, you got to teach yourself, that's not bad. Sometimes they're just trying to figure out, oh my goodness, That's a lot of money. Oh my goodness, I don't have 45. Maybe, maybe I have 20. You got to remember, there's a lot of stuff going on in their brain. You can't assume that they're not talking, and that means they don't want to do it. Sometimes they're trying to figure out what just happened.
Yes.
I don't have that kind of cash on me today. And what they are doing in a lot of cases is trying to start the beginning of the solution. So you have to be smart enough not to get in that way. Would you agree?
Yeah. The silence, I want dentists to think, the silence is actually their neurons firing, the patients. They're thinking.
Love that.
They're thinking, how am I going to get to that number? They're thinking of their monthly budget. They're thinking of ways to find money. They're thinking of how to get that done. They're actually, in their brain needs time to work through that. Now, it feels awful on the other end, because it's like, oh my gosh, it takes some practice to get this right.
Right.
But once you understand the neurobiology, the neuroscience, what is happening, you have to give them time and allow them time to formulate their next response. And you'll be surprised that the longer the pause, the more solution focused that response is going to be.
Yeah, it starts slow. We say this all the time, but it's true in this case more than any. You know how you build an amazing practice? One patient at a time. So you might not be having this happen in your practice. You also might be a team member that's listening to this going, hey, listen, you don't understand the culture of this practice. It's 30 years of nobody paying. Mm-hmm. Well, you know how we're going to fix that? Today. With one patient at a time. We're going to have one patient pay. And typically it's often easiest to do it with new or newer patients because they don't know. They don't have any. And celebrate that one success. Just think about this. If nobody pays, one patient pays today. Right. That's a good day. Yeah. Now tomorrow we're going to get 2 patients to pay. And then next week we might have a day where 3 patients pay.
Yeah, that's such a good point with the new patients, because with those 30-year-old patients, they were a new patient once.
For sure.
And they were taught that not paying is okay.
Right.
So at minimum, when a new patient today, like, hey, Mrs. Jones, let me tell you how financial arrangements work in this office. You can do X, you can do Y, you can do Z. They're like, oh, okay. And they're going to pay. And then we take our time, one patient at a time per day with the older patients, moving them into our new expectations. It's not as hard as it sounds.
I agree. And I would totally debunk what's going on in your brain if you're listening to this, because you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to kill my practice. I actually have so much respect now in today's day and age in a marketplace where somebody just tells me what it is right up front.
Yep.
I hate it when they sugarcoat it. They don't tell me exactly what it means. How am I going to pay for this now? No, we'll get that later. And then later, 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, somebody throws a huge bill at you and you go, now I'm really angry.
Right. Well, let's go to this next idea. Your same patients, the ones that you don't ask for money, mm-hmm. the ones that drag their feet, when they go to Home Depot to buy a refrigerator, they pay for it all.
What?
And if
I walked in there the other day, I just walked out with it, and then I said, I'll catch up with you guys next week.
So our whole culture goes just about everywhere and expects that, hey, I want this. It costs X. I know I have to pay that. And if I can't pay it, I have to wait until I can pay it.
Right.
Now we can get into financial arrangements and we can get all the third-party financing and we can go down all the creative ways to find solutions for patients. But the mindset is the fear of like our patients don't know they need to pay. They do.
Yeah.
Because they do it every single day in every other financial transaction. They've just been taught that it's okay to do it in the dental office. So let's change that.
You know who's my favorite more than Home Depot?
Ooh.
It's Costco, right up at your house. You load all that stuff on the conveyor belt, and they don't even really say hi. They just hold their hand out there, and you got to put 2 cards in their hand. You got to put method of payment, and like everyone in line is like, gosh, haven't you been here before? Now, if you remember, they didn't even take MasterCard or Visa.
Right.
They were like, no, we don't even take that.
They didn't even take every credit card. They limited how you can pay drastically.
I think it was American Express and cash.
Yeah.
That's all.
And they're so busy, I don't even go there on the weekend.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's awful.
I spend way too much money there, you know?
Totally. I didn't know.
And now you're so happy to do it. And so you throw it right up on there. I think we're in a day and age. I know we're in a day and age where you have to be really confident collecting money.
Yeah.
We always say this, that if somebody isn't really confident collecting money, again, they can unsell dentistry. 70% of case acceptance happens between the clinical discussion and the financial discussion. So that's a piece of your process that has to be rehearsed quite a bit. And then somebody has got to say, I got this. And you're going to see its impact. Now, it's not about the money. It's about the confidence and the value, because it has all of these other aspects to it. Give us a few more strategies.
Well, one is revisit your financial arrangements.
Okay.
So if you're not collecting 100%, let's see, do we have written financial arrangements? And if we do, let's revisit them and make sure we're following them or improve them. And if we don't, let's make them.
Yeah.
And number one, top of the line of that system should be, we collect 100% of out-of-pocket patient responsibility on day of service or before.
Right. And I don't want to turn this podcast into a 2-hour podcast, but part of you having financial arrangements is you're billing out your full fee. It is in writing every single time, because this question comes up. Do I have to have a written financial arrangement for every one of them? Maybe I should just do my big cases. No. When you haven't written, patients don't remember everything.
Right.
And so I like the idea of having a written copy for everything all the time. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I never saw a patient that didn't have financial arrangements set. I made it like a principle. I don't want to tip a patient. No, they know what it costs, and they've probably already paid or have an agreement with Chrissy to pay on the way out the door.
Right.
Now it's all about the dentistry, and that's where I, as the clinician, wanted my head to be. It's all about the dentistry, not about the money. We take care of that prior.
Right.
And what that does is also builds value and engagement for the patient. Like, that part's done. I'm in. I'm committed. Let's go.
Right.
And that is how you collect more than 100%.
Right.
Is when you're having financial consultations, when you're presenting treatment not in the chair but in a consultation room, when you're utilizing your financial coordinator as a treatment coordinator and talking through treatment. Because if you talk about treatment and you have a financial arrangement set to that, and the patient's like, I want it, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's take care of half of that up front, and then we'll take care of the rest day of service. It's pretty easy to collect over 100, because it's not about the money, it's about the dentistry. And once you sell the dentistry and they value it, they're going to pay for it.
Totally agree. Greg Tarantola, a great friend of mine years ago, said, Kirk, the more you do up front, less you have to do later. And so he was talking about, like, just do all the work up front, whether it be the thinking or the finances, and it creates more predictability. If you're a dentist listening to this, you don't need the money. The money's an important piece to your practice. You need high levels of predictability. Mm-hmm. And when you have this process that you're talking about, where people make a commitment prior to the appointment and then pay the balance at it. Now, if you listen to a few podcasts ago, Miranda was talking about an advanced reservation fee. She was not afraid to ask patients when she was working at admin for the entire fee, right after the consult. So that you could create that consistency. And it's not unusual for us to see a lot of the doctors we coach have negative receivables. Now, there's a downside to that. You owe people dentistry. Right. Now you have to be responsible with your cash flow, but it's a wonderful way to create higher levels of predictability when you're doing that in advance, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the last strategy is AR.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're only collecting 95%, then you have money that's accounts receivable that should be in your bank account, and it's not. And what's the strategy? Just go collect it.
Yeah.
Print a report, call the patients and say, you owe us money. You're going to do this in a nice way, but you owe us money. Let's get you caught up. Right.
It's investing with a negative yield. So the money's declining value by the day.
Right.
And the other thing, it's eroding the relationships. And here's why. People that owe you money, they don't like you. Yeah. I heard somebody say that many years ago. I wish I could remember who said it, but it was so true. Anyone that owes you money doesn't like you. You can argue with me all day long, but if you have a patient that you really like that owes you money, they are avoiding you like the plague. Yeah. They are staying away from your business. Don't kill the relationships because there was a gap financially. You've had it happen with family members. You've had it happen with friends. You've screwed it up, and money, the lack of accountability or clarity with financial pieces can kill relationships faster than anything. So I'm a big fan of having a system for AR. A lot of the old AR you aren't going to be able to collect. And I'll short course this for you, but a lot of times if you have a team member at the front and they're over tasks, you can have somebody in the first week be working in 030, then 3160 week 2, and then 6190 week 3, and then plus 90 week 4, and they can just rinse and repeat. And I'll tell you're not going to recover a lot of week 4, but you're going to want to start with the most important. And that's a simple way to look at it, but get that AR to 0. Right. And people say month and a half of, I don't necessarily agree with that. I like to see it way below 1 if possible, which is, that's not what this podcast is about, but you know what I'm trying to say. I think the lower your AR, the better.
Absolutely.
So
have a negative AR.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Why not?
Yeah. The whole, it's okay to have a month and a half or 2 months of your production in AR. That's crazy talk.
Right.
That's money that you're only going to get a percentage of that back. You're not going to get when it hits 90 days, your odds of collecting it is almost 0.
Right.
And so all that money is, you're just going to collect a smaller percentage of that. That money should be in your pocket. Now you have a collections gap. Now your overhead goes up. Your profitability and cash flow go down. You have less money in your pocket because that's where it comes from, is right out of the doctor owner's profit.
Totally. And I would even argue that the higher your AR is, the more you're going to have to add people to do that. You're probably going to add another admin team member who's just handling a poorly run AR situation, which is not fun either.
Right.
So,
and a high AR is a red flag for procedural errors.
Right.
And maybe not errors, but lack of systems. Right. So if our systems are set, when we bill insurance, we do this, we collect this, we do X, Y, and Z. When those systems are in place, you don't get a big AR because you collect all the money.
Right.
And so when we do have a big AR or a collections gap, often the problem or the issue or the miscommunication is in the details of the system.
Yeah.
And so we just have to, roll up our sleeves and get after it. And it is very recoverable.
Yeah, I love it. Give us some final thoughts on the silent killer.
Well, the silent killer, when you own a dental practice, you took a risk to do it. And we spent a lot of our lives becoming clinicians and focus on the dentistry. And that's awesome. But when we do that dentistry, we want to make sure that we are remunerated for that effort. We need to pay our people. We need to pay our expenses. We need a return on our own investment. And so it just makes solid business sense that I'm going to collect what is owed to me. And that's your net production. So we as doctors have to take ourselves take our clinician hat off and be a business strategist and think differently and think better and get to that conceptual place where 95% while close to 100 is not good enough.
Yeah.
Because that 5% is a lot of money.
Right.
And we're going to get there. And we're going to do so in a very authentic, sincere, ethical way with our patients. And patients are going to value the added clarity and the clear expectations. And your team is going to love it because they don't have to chase people. And so the silent killer is just something we want to take out of the equation. Then once you're collecting 100%, now let's go to work on some of these other gaps so we can further increase your cash flow and profitability.
Yeah, and don't hear this the wrong way if you're listening to the podcast, but if you're leaving 5% on the table in the scenario that you're talking about, it's like taking $5,000 and just lighting it on fire every single month. And some of you go, no, that's not true. We'll recover it later. No, you don't.
No,
you don't. That just keeps going out into the universe and it actually grows in a bigger fashion. So our goal with this podcast is to create great information to help you create a better practice and better life. Whether you're the dentist listening to this or a team member, we want you to listen to this together with a good mindset and say, hey, listen, we know the numbers. We know there's an opportunity there. What can we do? And a couple of things. If you don't have good success with the percentages you have, you can reach out to us. That's our job, is to help you. We also have an amazing team member. Her name is Miranda Beeson. She teaches a regular course that we're going to be developing even into more coming here in the future. We have a special place in our heart for admin team members who have never been trained. Right. Our goal is to give you the training that you need. You can also come back in the Best Practices Association, which is our online portal that has our community back there with other team members. You can see great financial arrangements. You can see a lot of examples of the things that we've laid out here in this podcast, and join us over there.
Yeah. And if you're a dentist and you've been hearing about this GAPS, join us on August 23rd.
Yes.
Kirk and I are going to do a special one-time 2-part webinar virtually, and we're going to walk you through the whole GAPS method. We're going to give you all the tools. We're going to work through how you can input your own numbers and find out what your collections gap is, as well as your effort, overhead, and cash flow. And then we'll give you the strategies to start implementing some of them.
Yeah. There's nothing like it in dentistry. And you can think about it this way. We're going to walk you through a process in which you can self-diagnose, write your own treatment plan for your business, and walk you through it step by step by step. So you do not want to miss that. There's going to be a link down in the show notes. You can register for it. I promise you, you're going to love it. So
awesome.
Good stuff today,
Good
brother.
Deal. Fun.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, we'll stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else, but thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show. Hey, if you enjoyed today, do us a favor, hit the share button and share this with your friends. Keep spreading the word. We love it that you guys keep showing up, and we're going to keep bringing it. So until you see us next time or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.